Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Go back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun. Good morning, everybody. Oh, we need to start the music. It is Tuesday, and the market has been pretty wishy-washy ahead of Powell's testimony this morning. And I set the title to be Enduring the Circus. I really hate the Federal Reserve congressional testimony because Congress has just become a circus. And we don't actually get any benefit out of this. It's just an opportunity for Congress to posture. Of course, the oversight over the Federal Reserve is very, very important. But I kind of think that maybe it would be better to do this indoors rather than, just create an opportunity for politicians to try and make sound bites. But market cares about it for whatever reason, so we're going to have to put up with it today. Let's go over to the charts, just see if there's any interesting moves here that we need to take note of. So S&P 500 did okay yesterday, but then it gave up its gains, so we're basically flat over there. The treasuries saw a pretty decent sell yesterday. I felt like it was a really strong trend, but now you can see it's retracing. So I don't know what's driving some of these flows. I feel like a lot of the flow in the treasury lately has been a little bit random, but clearly when we look at the chart here, the market is a little bit conflicted, right? So moving on to oil had a good day yesterday and just pulling back off of its recent new highs. Gold and silver getting hammered a little bit this morning, though. That's interesting, especially since yields came back down by quite a bit. So that must mean, well, here's copper down a little bit. That must mean that the dollar, well, I don't know, man. Not quite sure why gold getting hit so much today. The dollar is making a move, though. So, oh yeah, and Bitcoin's still dead after that huge sell. So that's where we're at. Something's going on. Hold on. So let's come to, let me check a couple of sources here. Spot gold is incrementally softer as USD retains a positive bias. Yellow metal holding just above the 21-day moving average at 18.1842. Okay, we've definitely busted through that now. Base metals are softer given broader price action and APAC price action following China's trade data. I always forget to turn on my fan. You know what? I'm looking at this now. I'm looking at my camera. So I don't see anything that should be really dramatically hurt gold, but it looks like it may have something to do with China trade data. I'm looking at my face here, and it seems like the camera is not right. Do I have on this source here the filter? I do. Okay, well, whatever. Oh, you know what? It's probably... Yeah, that's a little better. In fact, with that, I need to tone it down a little bit. There we go. Well, I am curious as to why rates came all the way back up after that really aggressive move down yesterday too. But you know what? Doesn't matter. We got Powell this morning. So to the Powell thing, here's the thing. They usually don't say anything new. Okay, congressional testimony is probably not the best place to come and bring out like our change in policy or anything like that. Okay. But the market does pay attention to what he says, and there are like impulsive moves off of it often, especially during the first part of his testimony, his prepared remarks that often talk about financial conditions. So you don't want to hold a position going into it. All right. It starts at the top of the hour. So, and I guess we'll watch it. And make fun of the senators, because I just hate it. I really do. In the meantime, let's do our little morning ritual by reading and discussing a tip from the Ferengi Rules of Acquisition. Yes. So, all right. Number 284. Deep down, everyone's a Ferengi. Well, self-interest ultimately usually does trump other things, don't they? Don't they? I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, because I want to do the best thing for our community here, right? And sometimes it's not very clear to me, you know, because the whole issue is like you have lots of different choices, and which of those choices end up being the most optimal one, right? I would like to spend a lot more time studying this book, Machine Learning. Okay, like the Financial Markets Under the Microscope. That was a great book, and it was a challenging book, but I feel like I ultimately understood what I was talking about. And part of that is because they have like really good summaries of the research after it and all of that sort of stuff, right? This book, Machine Learning, by Matthew Dixon and Iger Halprin. Oh, and I guess Paul Billow-Kahn. So I don't know who that is, but that book is kicking my butt, because you go into it and it'll talk about a bunch of like advanced statistical math sort of a stuff, and it does all these proofs, and then it just moves on to the next math of things. It doesn't like summarize it for you or any of that. And I'm just like, oh man, I really got to study hard this book, you know? So I would like to spend more time doing that. And the morning would be like one of the best times to do that, right? But we stream. And sometimes there's days where I don't plan on taking a trade, and then maybe it would be a good time to study, but I don't know. We still do productive things here where we talk about the markets and we build community and stuff like that, right? But I'm getting to the point now where like, not that I'm like looking for a new day job, but like people keep messaging me and they're starting to become like the offers that the jobs that people want me to interview now are starting to get like too good to pass up on. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of sitting here like, wow, we could go on a hiatus for a couple of years. I kind of feel like I want to do this till the day that I die, but maybe it might make sense at some point. Maybe I do more for you guys in the long run by taking a hiatus for a couple of years, saving up a ton of cash and studying super, super hard and then coming back, you know? And so when I think about that, I'm like, well, am I just doing that because I know that would be best for me? You know, would make a little bit more from a day job. Because look, we've been doing really good with the day trading, but it's not as much as I make from doing computer science stuff, right? So I don't know. It's a tough one, but not something that we have to worry too much about yet. Maybe sometime this year it might come up, but maybe not. Maybe we just continue trotting along. I tell you what, this treasury market is definitely like, so one of the things you want to look at is just like, what is the level 2 doing in terms of like activity levels, right? So you'll notice that you can go several seconds right now without any level 2 changes. Like you might see a shift. Okay, so like they shifted there at 10, right? And then you'll kind of see a bunch of other prices shift in reaction to that. But like in reality, like not a whole lot is going on. So this is a very, very quiet market to start the day out. I really does seem like the market is expecting to do stuff for Powell. That probably means that Powell is going to move the market, even regardless of what he says, even if what he says is stupid, you know? So be aware of that. Don't get caught in that, right? I have my safeties on. Safeties on. I am not taking a trade here till after Powell. Whoa, wait. The QAnon shaman guy with the buffalo horns had a tour guide when he went through Congress? Are you kidding me? That's so funny. Yeah, we'll pull it up. I'll tell you what, we'll pull it up and then I'll complain about everything that Congress says, okay? That's what it'll turn into. Last time around, we just didn't watch it. I can remember. I remember now. Last time around, 6 months ago. Was it 6 months ago? Yeah, it's every 6 months, right? I was like, it doesn't matter. It's just like we don't even need to watch it. We'll just hear what happens over the news squawk. And then there was quite a bit of shuffling around and screwing around while he was speaking. And it was like, oh, okay, I guess we're not going to take a trade. I don't think that I lost money on it or anything, but this time around, I feel like, yeah, let's just watch it, and maybe we'll learn something about how dysfunctional Congress is right now. Really is. I remember there was this thread on Reddit the other day. I always think it's funny which kind of Reddit comments do really well and which ones don't. So yesterday, somebody posted a confession bear saying that his family gave him like $1,000 to help him leave his wife and get off on his own, and he used about half of it on hookers and blow. Like, I don't know if that's like a serious confession bear, but that was a confession bear. And usually confession bears aren't actually real confessions, you know, they're more like bragging. Okay, it's more like bragging bear, but this was a real confession. So I commented, wow, a real confession bear. This sounds like a disaster in the making, but we're with you all the way, OP. And people loved that. But then I get into a political thread on r/politics. Or no, it wasn't politics. It was on Pex. But it was a picture about how dysfunctional Congress is, and I go into why Congress is so dysfunctional, and nobody cares, you know. So maybe that means I shouldn't talk about it on stream, but we're gonna, because here's what happens with Congress. You notice that when a president gets into office or when a party retakes office, so now you have a choice. you get to set the agenda, and you can set the agenda to whatever it is that you want to do, right? And of course, you have things that you talked about with your constituents that you'd like to do. But there's a lot of those different things, and which one do you pick? And what I have noticed has been happening ever in the post-Bush era. It started with Obama, right? Well, it was started before Obama. It started like 2 years before Obama, when the Democrats took Congress over, right towards the end of the Iraq, towards the end of George Bush's term, right? They could come in and say, okay, well, here's all of these things that we need to do, and we know that everybody wants, and so let's get those things done, right? And they don't do them, because then that could, especially if it's like like it is right now, you have a Republican Congress and a Democrat president. Congress doesn't want to pass anything really good and useful, because that might make Joe Biden look good, right? So you can't work together. You can't build a coalition and pass like common sense laws that everybody agrees should happen. No. You have to go through and try and ram through the most radical and aggressive policy you can now while you have the chance, right? Like that's what Obama did. First thing, okay, let's do healthcare then. Okay, well, then he used up all of his political capital, and then nothing really happened for the other 7 years of his tenure, right? They can't work together. And part of it may just be that approach that like they don't put the bipartisanship first. They don't put trying to work together with people first anymore. But I think that a large part of it is the social media. And this is why I hate the congressional testimony so much, is that what has happened with the internet is that people get so much access to their congressmen, but they don't get enough access or insight into what's going on in Congress to really understand the issues and what they're doing, right? So in the past, like the reason why a representative government was useful was that those people get the opportunity to go in and understand the issue really well and spend all of their time understanding the laws that are in front of them, right? And we, the constituents, we don't have to worry about going into that deep. We just have to worry about picking a good person that knows what they're doing, right? Now, it's not about that. People don't select congressmen or women that know what they're doing, that understand the laws, that have good economic sense, etc., etc. They pick people that are in line with their ideological values, which usually isn't very good, because every ideologue will just spout off the same thing, and they don't look at in situations individually and make decisions based on optimizing their goals in that situation. They just go back to their rhetorical framework and do what that says, which is often the wrong decision, right? So you get these things where, like, when you have congressional testimony and it's publicized, it's televised, it's all about performing for your constituents, because the whole thing is you got to perform for your constituents so that you can get reelected. And they don't actually spend that much time, I don't think anymore, really thinking about policy, and that's why nothing gets done. I mean, if Congress did all of these things in private and we didn't know about it, Congress would probably get more done. I don't think that would be the way to go. Because I think that transparency is really important too. But we've got to work out a better way to do this, man. We need better sources that are really seriously go into the policy and talk about the policy and help people understand the policy, so that and find ways to combat the airwaves, you know? Because what happens when you're the viral sensation on TikTok, or everybody on cable news is covering you, is just such a attention bias. What people are paying attention to is such a powerful force in politics, and it's become a negative force. So we need to find some way to counter that, you know? So yeah, that's what the testimony is going to be like. All right. So now that I pontificated about this enough, I don't have to pontificate about it when they're actually talking. I can just make fun of them. Yeah. Now I want to read this story here. Because they've got the Capitol protest footage and people are talking about it. The surveillance footage shows Capitol Police calmly escorting the QAnon shaman throughout the Capitol system and even helped him find open doors. The tapes show the Capitol Police never stalked Jacob Chansley, said Carlson. They helped him. They acted as his tour guides. Wasn't he, like, crazy prosecuted? Hold on. That's a little problematic. He was sentenced to 41 months. Okay, that's not that bad. Pleaded guilty to felony charge of obstructing an official proceeding, was among the first rioters to enter the building. He acknowledged using the bullhorn to rile up the mob, offering thanks and prayer while in the Senate for having the chance to get rid of the traitors, and scratching out a threatening note to Vice President Mike Pence saying it's only a matter of time, justice is coming. Oh, really? Oh, is that why they talk about Mike Pence so much, maybe? Two years still. Or you don't know, you're right, 4 years. That's, I mean, that's an outrage, really, isn't it? I'm trying to think of how, so I'm thinking here, like, okay, so people come in and they see that this guy got 4 years and the police basically escorted him around the building. How outraged will the public be about that? I think that Republicans got a very good reason to be upset, but I'm not sure that this really will pick up traction, unfortunately. Still, that's nuts. Yeah, see, when I heard 41 months, I'm like, well, that's not that bad, but it's 4 years. 4 years in federal prison. I don't think that the punishment fits the crime. But there's been other people that have been very, very aggressively prosecuted. This really is, I mean, how do you justify that? I'm having a hard time here. What would the Democrats say about this? He's with the police. He's with the Capitol Police, being escorted through the building. Surely he must think that what he's doing is okay. Yeah, there's like 700 plus people just uncharged, and yeah, it's ridiculous. It's political prosecution. Man, I tell you what, this is one that I don't think we talk about in our society enough. Maybe they talked about it in earlier days, but this was not a concept that I ever remember being really emphasized to me when I was a kid. But I think it's a very, very important thing, and it's this. If you are against tyranny, then you should really work hard to protect the rights of criminals. Yes. Why is that? Well, because if criminals have no rights, then that basically means that the government can come along, charge anybody of a crime, and put them in prison and silence, get rid of them, etc., etc., etc. Right? That criminals having rights is what prevents the government from being able to abuse that power, right? If you don't have rights, then you end up like Russia, right? That's what happened in Russia, was that anybody that opposed the regime was put in prison or disappeared, right? So, these people that they've been, I mean, it's been like 2 years now, right? And they haven't been tried. That is Not okay. That is not constitutional. Okay, Alexis, good morning. Along the way, the trio passed a large group of Capitol Police officers who appeared disinterested in Chansley, even despite his flamboyant attire. The video shows Chansley and his police escorts approaching various doors to the chamber, with a police officer pushing and pulling them to see if they're unlocked. What? Maybe. I don't think it would work like that. You know what, Uzi? I am super interested in that subject, like, because my one of my kids, his friends are all into that. Like, it's kind of funny because he doesn't consider himself trans per se, but he's all in on the movement, I guess, and like all of his friends are like that. And so I've done a lot of research on it as a concerned parent. At one point, he's always had sleep problems, so he's kind of always, I feel like his chemicals are kind of a little messed up, and he's prone. So when I say sleep problems, like, he had sleep apnea. Can you imagine having sleep apnea at like 12? Oh my gosh. But that's what he had, sleep apnea, and they had his surgery, and I think that the surgery fixed it. But so he's kind of been prone to depression, I think, because of that. That kind of messed him up, right? So I'm concerned about him, right? So I've been doing a lot of research about that subject. I could go into so much stuff, like, I do the same thing. I like science. I've gone and I've read all of these studies and stuff. I have a lot I could say about these studies, but you know what? I don't think that there's any advantage of me doing it, because number one, if you come in and you say anything, you depending on what you say, you really attract a lot of negative attention, and they try and cancel you and whatnot and everything. But it's more so than that. I don't think I actually have to do anything. Like, you would think, oh, okay, there's a problem, there's a social contagion, I should speak out against this, and then that's how we're going to overcome this issue as a society or whatever, and get down to the truth, etc., etc. It's not. I'm telling you, it's going to collapse on its own. 100%. It's already collapsing on its own. No joke. Every time that I see Republicans get excited about it, I'm like, well, generally speaking, you're right, but you don't actually have to worry about it. It's going to collapse on its own. Well, did you know that if they go to a clinic like that, if you take your kid to a gender clinic, they have to affirm whatever it is that the kid says. So, like, yeah. So if you're a parent and you're concerned about that sort of thing, you just don't take it to the clinic. But I digress. I don't think I have to say these sorts of things. I'm telling you, it's going to collapse on its own. It already is. So there was this story a couple of weeks ago. This lady, the very, very far left activist type person. She's a lesbian. She has I think that her partner was trans or lesbian or something like that. And she worked at a gender clinic, and she basically blew the whistle on the stuff that was going on in this clinic. And the things in that story, man, I can't say on air. They're inappropriate for this platform. They're inappropriate for this platform. Absolutely shocking things. And you just have to go read it. And I'm telling you, when you have people on the inside blowing the whistle and saying things like that, that's not going to last long. I'm telling you, it's going to die on its own. Everybody's going to look back on it in 10 years and be like, remember that one time when everybody was cutting their, well, it wasn't they were cutting their dicks off. So most of them are women. You see, here's the issue. Here's the other issue with that, Uzi, is that when you get into that subject, it just leads me into talking about autism and ADHD. And I know you love talking about that, right? It is. Can I tell you everything? Yeah, everything leads into you talking about ADHD. Okay, okay. So if I can talk about whatever I like, then let's talk about autism. In my opinion, autism is the greatest societal issue that we deal with today in terms of mental health. This is the overwhelming. Like, if you want to improve people's lives, bring quote social justice to a group of people, start talking about autism. Okay, because listen, autism is a deficiency. I think that the people that kind of identify as slightly autistic out there act like, no, we're not. It's just, we're just different, right? It's just a completely different way of thinking, except no, it's not. It's a deficiency. Okay, it's a deficiency in your frontal cortex that prevents autistic people from being able to make the same kind of quick snap judgments that regular people do. It's a fast system that allows people to make decisions quickly, and it provides a tremendous advantage in certain situations. Okay, autistic people only focus on the things that they're good at. What they don't realize is that regular people can do all of those things too. It's just that they generally choose not to because they don't have to, right? But a regular person, if they're growing up and they think about those things and they use that kind of systems analytical part of their brain more, they can make the same kinds of thinking and decision like autistic people, but they're able to be conscious about it and know when to use that and when to use those higher order executive systems, right? So like, the reality is that a regular person can understand an autistic person very well, but not vice versa, because the autistic person is just kind of missing, certain types of thinking, I guess you could say, right? And so what does this end up doing? Well, it ends up that autistic people have it super hard. So I think the statistics are that only like 10% of them are actually like in the workforce when they're very, very capable, right? And it really all it comes down to is people being aware of what it is and being sensitive and putting forth the effort to work with them. That's all it takes. That's all it takes for these people. And they don't. We see them as defective and we try and get away from them. So there's probably no issue in our society where we have the ability to bring a greater quality of life to a group of people more than autism. And the amount of the population that is autistic is much higher than we realize. That's the other thing, is as people think of autism as like, it's a really, not very many people have it. That's not very common. Well, like, when it's like full on disorder, then when it's enough of a disorder that you're really like autistic, then like you're really autistic and it really affects your life, right? But there are a lot of people that still have degrees of autism that just fly under the radar. Well, it's not that everybody has it. That's what's interesting about it, right? Is that everybody could act autistic, right? Because like just think of it this way, is like, if I come in here and I look at the chart, or I look at the DOM, and I can just kind of get a feel based on the activity on the DOM about kind of like what's going on, right? That's like your top level executive functioning kind of working. I've sat and I've watched that, and the neurons have made the connections and everything to kind of see what's going on and make a snap judgment, right? But we also know that that's not really, that that's only worth so much. And so for me to really make a trade, I need to come in and I need to do a deeper analysis of it. I need to engage those deeper analytical systems, right? So I need to think about, what are the news, what are the flows that we're having, and based on all of this information, do I have a situation where I can actually say that there's going to be an imbalance in the flows in a certain direction, right? That's and the thing is that autistic people, that's all they have. That's all they have, right? And then the other side of it is like, I can come in here and trade, and just trading and just talking to you people is like, I love it so much. You get so much dopamine out of it. It's so engaging to me, and that just carries me through. I could just do it one day a week, and that would carry me through the whole week, right? Because I have the medication and I'm normal, right? A autistic person, they're never getting enough of dopamine. They're never getting enough dopamine. So that one thing that they find that is actually is interesting to them, it's like that's the only thing that they've got. And so their brain just goes down that pathway over and over and over and over and over again, and then they become obsessed with this one subject, right? You can become obsessed with the subject too, right? You go over and again and you get the dopamine, and it kind of creates that, right? It's the same thing. I believe that it could be engineered in autistic people. I think that with the help of a neurotypical person, they could together make a conscious decision to become interested in something that would be really beneficial to them, like finance would probably be a really good choice, and become an expert in that thing. And if they're constantly being directed down that path of thinking and they receive a dopamine reward from it, then they'll very quickly become obsessed with that subject. That's why autistic people, they tend to find something when they're like between 14 and 25, and then they just latch onto that for the rest of their life. Okay, so I think that we're about to start. I don't think that I have, let's see here. I want to try and pull it up on C-SPAN, I think. Can't measure true neurotransmitters. Are very difficult to convince a child about stopping grains and sugar. There's been a lot of sorry, hold on, I'm getting on right here. It says watch live on March 7th at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Well, that's saying that it's not start for another hour. Hold on. Do I get this? Oh, I see. So we get their prepared remarks, but he doesn't speak until 8 o'clock. I gotcha. So we did get it. I not really seeing anything. So have they just not released it yet? I don't know. We'll keep an eye out. Yeah. Anyways, there's been a lot of work about like ADHD and diet and so forth, and the results have been really inconclusive. So I think the issue that you get on that sort of a thing is that first of all, it is very much genetic, right? It is very much genetic, but then different people are going to be affected by environmental factors differently. So it seems to me like environmental factors like your diet could be a factor, but not necessarily the most major factor. But that's a really tough. So in particular, research on diet and exercise is incredibly difficult to do well, because there's so many variables, and trying to isolate it in enough people to prove something is really, really difficult, right? That's why some of the places where like our science is the most deficient, I would say, is in relating to like diet and what we're eating and stuff. Personally, I also think that some research may be getting suppressed to some extent, but that's a conspiracy theory. But there certainly are a lot of compounds. I tell you what, there are a lot of compounds that are outright banned in the EU, and the United States are just like, well, you can have this much of it in there. It's okay. So have they not released it? His comments? Because I'm still not seeing anything on Twitter. Well, one thing that we did see here, though, was that the treasuries did sell a little bit and the S&P 500 didn't like it. And it seems like the market is looking for an excuse to sell it. No, all of this stuff, though, it's really important because even if you're a neurotypical person, understanding those disorders and what results from those disorders, right, can kind of help you with your own, like, performing your best, right? Because you know, so if you don't have a good diet, you're not exercising well, and especially if you're not getting good sleep, right, then you won't have enough of those neurotransmitters in your brain, right? And then you will start to suffer the same kinds of symptoms that an ADHD person does to some extent, right? That's kind of the thing, is that, like, what would be like a regular person on their worst day, that's what an ADHD person is all the time, right? But then you can kind of use the same kinds of coping strategies and so forth to keep you at your peak, right? So that's why it's worth talking about so much. It's teaching us, it's learning about thinking, right? It's learning about thinking. Still seeing gold looking bearish. Why do you think gold is looking so bearish today? Yeah, I mean, the dollar is going up. You're right. It's just that, like, it's not going up that much and gold is just getting savaged. So it's like it's reacting to it much more strongly this morning than it has been. You think that the dollar is going to make a big move here today? Like, you think we could see 105? Oh, you don't have the candles? You download the latest version. You just go to the website and download the zip that's got it in there. Fasting is more important for your health than working out. Oh, okay, that's a different thing. There's been some my understanding is that there's been some controversial science on that lately. There's two versions of the indicator, Uzi. On that one, there's the dollar index and there's the dollar index candles. And if you don't have it, you just go to speculatorseth.com and download the package and install it over top of what you have right now, and you'll be up to date. Yep, you just download the trial, because there's the what you get in the quote trial is the full software, right? The only thing that I do is I enable you in the licensing. That's the only difference, right? Which to that point, and I've had many of you guys do this, and I'm totally okay working things out. So I've had a lot of people that they tried the trial, and then but they were like still messing with data and things like that, and so they wanted to try it on their new broker, their new data platform, whatever. Can totally do that, right? Because I can just go in and adjust your settings so that, you know, change when your trial ends or whatever, because it's all just done through NinjaTrader's licensing system. Yep. This version, the newest version, is a little bit better. So what it does, like so if you look at these candles really closely, you can kind of see that the gray candles are pretty like clean. And then when you come over here and you see the blue and orange candles, you can see more tails and it's a little bit more messy and stuff. What I've done is you're kind of limited in how accurately you can calculate that index when you're looking at historical data without like doing a data series underneath or whatever. So when it's live, you're getting like the fully accurate dollar index, and when it's historical, it just kind of does a quick estimate, I guess you could say. So that's why these ones are gray. So there's a little setting to say gray historical bars. So it seems like an indicator. Well, I'm gonna change it in the future, but with the synthetic dollar index, it's a separate indicator. So you might as well remove the old one, right? With the spreads, I changed it. With the spreads, it's one indicator, and there's just a property for you to change it between a candle or a line. I tell you what, both of those indicators, when I really went in and added all of the features that I thought they should have, and I haven't done it for the synthetic dollar index yet. I've done it primarily for the spreads, but once I added all of that in there, oh my gosh, the code became so complicated. I'm really proud of that code. I'm really proud of that code. It's not, because I think one might think, oh yeah, you know, it's a simple thing. Well, I don't know why you'd even charge for it, but it really wasn't. Okay, so you have to remove the old add-on. You may have to, yes. So there's at least one add-on in there that it kind of does. So yeah, if it refuses to import it, then remove the old add-on first and then install a new one on top of it. Yeah. I'm kind of thinking that I should have taken 3.95 here, man. It really seems like the treasuries want to sell hard. And if we've got an hour, well, this flow is a little bit fishy, I think. We are getting enough of a downturn. Ooh, I don't know, man. This is kind of an interesting situation that doesn't happen very often, because we do have enough auto-correlated volume to the downside to kind of justify some trading, right? And I think that we have a pretty good reason to be thinking that the market wants the rates to go higher again. They seem to want 4% anyways, and then we got Powell speaking, and it seems like the market is expecting him to be a little bit hawkish, right? So I think that we could justify a trade, but we're in a situation where I've kind of said I don't want to take a trade because of Powell's testimony. We have about 45 minutes for a trade to work out. So we could try it. I think though I need a better position if I'm gonna do it. And I'm not gonna feel too bad if I miss something, right? Even if it's like a 50 basis, even if it's a $50 trade that I miss, I'm still okay. Eagle Mountain residents say they've concerned about their drinking water after the city switched to a different well. Ugh. The whole issue here is that, like, there are cases where it does not take very much of a chemical to harm you. They can say it's safe, and it just means that their tests aren't sensitive enough. I think that 50 years from now, when we look at like what are the things that it's crazy that was going on back then, sort of a thing, right? I think that the three things are going to be the ignorance about mental health, particularly autism, the censoring of people on social media, and what kind of chemicals we actually allowed to have in our food and our water. Those are going to be the things that 50 years from now we look back on and are like shocked and appalled at. Wait, what's Nassim Taleb saying? In a certain southwestern city, the Uber driver declares that he is a licensed real estate broker doing his part-time. Me, how is the real estate market doing? And the driver says, excellent, the market is very strong. Oh, we're really? Real estate agents are programmed to always lie about the strength of the market. That's interesting. You know what, though? He's not wrong, though. The real estate market is a disaster right now. It really is. But the demand is still there for the supply. So even though there's not a whole lot of inventory moving, the houses are selling. Folding my arms. I want to click it. I want to go market long 3955. I'm actually now though, the volume is not in line with the trade anymore. When again? What? I don't understand what that means. I'm a little slow on that sort of stuff, guys. You gotta be really obvious about it. I'm slow on the pickup of that sort of a joke. Oh man, this story. There's a story in my local area, not in my city, but a very closely neighboring city, where a man was shot by police. And he's a guy that doesn't look like he would normally be shot by police. And so people are saying that it's a police brutality incident, but police say that it was justified, and I don't know. It could be at some point national news. Salt Lake Tribune won't let me see it. It's behind the paywall. Screw you, I'm never paying for your magazine. I hate that. Hate that newspaper. Yeah, 30 minutes is plenty of time for a gamble trade. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm worried about, though. I feel like they did the thing and they sold, and it looks like it's unwinding. Like, I think I might have missed whatever kind of trade there was. It really is like the market seems like it's preparing itself for a hawkish bomb from the Federal Reserve here, and these are usually nothing burgers. Like the market moves on it, there's volatility for it, but like in the end it doesn't mean anything. And like the market moves on and ignores it. So I kind of see a lot of speculative positioning here. Oh, it picked one up. See, the other thing is that they have kind of been rotating. So like if I had taken a trade, I would be like stuck and frustrated right now, right? So probably good that we're just chilling. Just chilling. I'm just realizing how ADHD I am. I didn't finish the reading that article. Whoa, that is a big deal. Carlson also revealed that uncharged agitator Ray Epps lied during his sworn testimony. Epps testified that when he sent the text message to his nephew, he had already left the Capitol grounds to return to his hotel room. That's not true. The actual videotape shows that Hawley was one of many lawmakers being ushered out of the Capitol building by Capitol Hill police officers, and in fact, Josh Hawley was at the back of the pack. The coward tape was a lie. Oh. He wanted to stay behind, I guess. And there's more tonight. Oh, that's so interesting. Kind of sounds like you're not going to get anything that like really moves them on it, but certainly I think the conservatives, anybody that really studies it, and will see that the conservatives were right all along. Good to go. Okay, so you got it to work. Cool. The other one is there was a bug in my watermark indicator, and I had fixed it, but I guess when I had switched over to Aweber, the thing that emails it to you, didn't. Oh, you know what? It's on the. Yeah, it gets emailed to you. I don't think that I have like the straight. But either way, you could go to the website and sign up for the email and get it emailed to you. But you get a newer version of it. Wonder if I can mass send an attachment to the whole list. Maybe I should do that. Anyways, I fixed. If you get that problem, I fixed the bug. And just forgot to update the thing after fixing it. So I was like, oh, I'll test it and everything, and it works. It works for me. So. There is one thing with that watermark one. Sometimes it helps to just hit F5 and refresh it, but if it doesn't center the way that you want it to. Any new developments in your algo trading? So not any significant ones. So I'm still kind of in learning mode. I got a network rack. So my plan is to build like a data crunching tower of sorts. So I think that this computer here will go to giving my wife a better setup, that and maybe buying like 3D printing so she can play with that. And then I'm going to dump a ton of money into a machine with a ton of RAM and stuff and make it rack mounted. Yeah, the candle one is, I do much prefer the candle one as well. Trying to think. So the market depth tape is one that I highly recommend having open. You don't want it, like, you don't need to see it, but like setting it up, putting a filter on it and setting the little notification to some sort of a click that really alerts you like there was a major change in the level 2 that you might want to make note of, right? So I find that really useful. I find the spreads really useful. And then there's a couple of other ones that I don't necessarily use every day, but are useful in the larger scheme of things. And there's things in the so I tell you, another one that I added on there I haven't talked a whole lot about is the inverse. I know that the inverse is like the simple, because it's really just 1 divided by price, okay? But like I have that on my Japanese yen, and it is so useful because nobody ever talks about the price that you know, yen for USD or whatever, or USD for yen, because it's like 0.007, right? No, everybody always talks about the other way, 136. So to get that off of the 6J, you need to use inverse. So that one's like a must-have too, and that one's free. That's in the free pack, and the free pack also has all of the statistics stuff. The spread ones are really useful too, but I'm running into a screen real estate scarcity issue. Really? Okay. Oh, you know what? It's time for us to stand up and stretch. That's why I'm all feeling like this. Really slow open, and I know I'm late, but let's stand up and stretch. That really wakes you up. Gosh, my elbow's a little bit inflamed today for some reason. Something's changed. In days past, I could feel the bone, and now I can't. So I think that might mean that it's just the tissue around it is inflamed or something. But I like just barely bump it, it hurts. Okay. By the way, market liquidity's been all really great. Past month or two. Normal, at least. Does look like they're shifting around, maybe reacting to the S&P 500 open. Oh, excuse me. Oh, do you use RVol? Well, I'm not quite sure what that would be. Sometimes I will see people get banned by my autofilter, and I feel bad and I want to unban them, but then they can't message me, or I can't message them, so I can't tell them, well, this is why you got banned. Realized volatility? Well, I think that, well, so I always have on my daily chart, like an ATR kind of indicator. So that's kind of what I use as what is volatility. I think that volatility is really important to keep track of. But with us here in futures, at least with the data that we get, it's kind of difficult to keep track of it. So if we were doing options, we would probably pay for tools that were more specifically about that to get better estimates. But for us in futures, I don't know if it's enough. If it's really worth all the effort. So you just kind of keep track of it the best that you can through reading the news and just watching what the average true range is or whatever. See, this person is using I think they're using a special S. Let's see here. Yep, they're using the mathematical sans serif bold capital S. Oh yeah, sure. So in the free, no, it's I don't know which pack it's in, but if we come to the charts, I think it's in my paid pack. On a daily chart, I have what I call a multi ATR. So what it does is this histogram is range, and this line is average true range. But my ATR allows you to change the unit that it's being measured in. So regular ATR just only measures points, right? But mine allows you to do it by points, ticks, or percent. So on this one, it's showing ticks. So it's telling me, okay, the average true range for the day in the 10-year treasury is actually 40. Actually 40 ticks. So they're actually moving more than a handle a day, right? And then you can see like what's a really crazy day. Oh, okay. Well, it was 150, right? And if I come over to the ES, this one does it in percent, right? So the average true range for the S&P 500 lately has been 1.5%, with there being some days that were as high as 5% moves, right? That's what I use. And it's a part of my indicator package. So my robot has been doing a good job of picking up on people trying to impersonate me. So I wonder if I need to switch it over to using mine and getting rid of the other bot that's doing it for me now. Why does everybody use? That's a good question. I think that it's just that's what Wilder recommended for everything. So when you look at RSIs and all of Wilder's indicators on a daily chart, he liked to use a period of 14. And so I just use the defaults, what everybody else is using. But like this is where we get into again, like on a lot of these indicators, like what period do you use? It's kind of like splitting hairs, you know, doesn't really matter. As long as it allows you to see the thing on the chart that you need to see, right? So if I increased it, all you would get is, you know, a smoother line. But I'd say that this line is smooth enough for me. You know, if I was going to change it, maybe I would do like a 50. The only ones where I think the period really matters is the 50, 100, and 200 day moving averages. Market definitely reacts to those. Market cares about them at the very least. Wouldn't say that they necessarily give you a good trade or anything, but the market does care about them. Okay, so supposedly we already got his prepared remarks, even though I'm not seeing it anywhere on Twitter or anything. At 8 o'clock roughly is when we're supposed to get, is when the event is scheduled to start. So we should be able to pull up C-SPAN at that time and watch it, right? Top of the hour. And how long is it supposed to last? Hours. It's like 2 4-hour sessions or something like that. It's crazy. Oh, that's a burn. The Guardian asks, how scientifically literate should we expect our politicians to be? And Jordan B. Peterson says, how scientifically literate should the journalists at The Guardian be? That was a sick burn. I don't agree with everything Peterson says, but I try and follow everybody that's big on Twitter. And that was a sick burn, man. Oh my gosh, this reminds me, by the way, did you see the thing that Elon Musk tweeted yesterday? So Elon Musk tweeted yesterday that they pushed out an API change, and it had unintended consequences for a bunch of different systems, and the entire framework is more fragile than makes sense, and we'll probably have to rewrite it to fix the problem. And that is just, that's like, tell me you've never been involved in software development before. Because one of the things that you run into in software development when you're new is the new guys always want to just do a rewrite, right? So it really made me, I was kind of like, you know what? Maybe Elon Musk really doesn't have the chops to be doing what he's doing. If that's the way that he's going about it, and he's trying to make those kinds of technical decisions, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a disaster. And you would think that they would understand that an API change affects a lot of things, right? Like, it's kind of like anytime you change an API, you're kind of treading on uneasy ground, right? Like, you better be sure that you get a really big benefit out of that API change, right? He shouldn't have fired half of his engineers. I actually think that they did need downsizing. Yeah, I do think that they needed downsizing. The issue was, like, were you able to keep the right people, right? That's one question. But then there's the other question, which is, how good were they? You know? So with the amount that these guys were getting paid and everything, Twitter engineers should be like the best engineers on the planet, right? So we still don't completely know the answer here. Was it that they designed the system badly, or is it that Elon Musk are being naive and don't know what they're doing? Well, I'm leaning towards the latter right now, but I don't really have conclusive proof to that, you know? Complex system that works is invariably found to evolve from a simple system that worked. A complex system designed from scratch never works and cannot be patched up to make it work. You have to start over with the work. You know what? I don't know if that's been my experience. I have been able to engineer together with people some pretty complicated systems. Yeah. But you know what I find happens is that it's not that it's like too hard to engineer a complicated system and everything, but it's kind of more like The reason why the system is complicated in the first place is because of the number of business interests in that system, and those business interests often make it impossible for that system to really work out correctly. So, like, I'll give you an example. We used to have this interface that was, I think it was written in C# forms actually. But basically this interface that the people in the call center use that tells you like what to ask and where you enter in all of the information and stuff like that, right? And so a lot of the development has been that. Well, and they got in with some vendor that says, oh, we have a system that allows you to do the same thing, but you defined it all yourself without having to program anything, right? So that to me as an engineer is like a big flashing red sign, because I have seen so many freaking startups doing this sort of a thing where they're like, oh yeah, like if you use reflection in C# and do these things, you can make this system that can basically be flexible to anything, right? Well, yes, you can. But the problem is it never works as well as if you just go and you make it yourself, right? And the people that make those things are not always the most experienced people, right? But they'll have good salespeople and whatnot, and they convince the management on doing it, and then you do it. I don't like it because I'm like, listen, like our competency is writing these sorts of things. So like, if we don't trust ourselves to write these sorts of, what are we even doing? But whatever, they did it. And I took one, I had to performance test that system, and I looked at the performance tests. Just like in a QA system, I was having some situations where it was like waiting 15 seconds on a request. I'm like, nope, don't want anything to do with this. It's terrible. I'm not going to touch it. You guys want to go down there, right? You go down there. I'm not. No, thank you. That's what I think happens in complex systems. But now no one knows what's going on in a complex distributed system. Well, okay, so here's the thing. Here's my opinion on this, and I think this is an important thing to discuss because this is relevant to trading, right? The issue is that any kind of system like this will invariably become more complex than a single human being can hold in their mind at once, right? You might have a person that, you know, they're familiar enough with the system and the issues that like when an issue comes up, they can zero in on what needs to happen like very quickly and they can recall it from their memory. But to be able to like keep all of it in their mind all at once, it's impossible, right? So for instance, I'm working right now on this thing called F5, which is a load balancer. Kind of it takes the requests in and then routes them appropriately based on current loads. Okay. We have like over 1,000 different URLs, right? And hundreds of different pools that things get routed to. Because within those thousands of URLs, there's different applications that are developed by different people and can go to different places, right? That is too complicated for any one person to know it, to think everything about, to hold in their mind all at once, right? So what do you do in situations like that? Well, number one is you have to store some meta information about the system outside of the system. Okay. So these people, these engineers that say that believe like the documentation is the code, terrible. Don't hire those people. Don't hire. So it's a terrible thing because when you get to a complicated system, nobody has the time to read the whole code on it. Like you've got to describe it. The more meta information, the easier it is going to be for you to be able to make decisions and understand what's going on. So you want documentation in the code. You want meta information about what's going on. So for instance, we have these thousands of URLs. Yes, I could tell them go into that system, but what I can also do is I can pull all of that information out and put it in a spreadsheet with all of this kind of documentation about what each one of these are, so you can decide what to do with each of them, right? So that's the second part, is that when it becomes that complicated, you have to use systems to understand the system. Does that make sense? When systems become so complicated, you need to use systems to understand the system. And this is when you can come in and you can start doing things like models and modeling that system and the behavior within that system to understand how it behaves and what you might need to do, what the optimal decisions are in those situations. And so that's how we approach the market, right? The market is so complicated that no one person has access to all of the information. And if they did, there's no way that they would be able to factor all of that information in their head into a sound decision, right? So what do you have to do? You have to build other systems to help you understand the different parts of it. So you can have a system that helps you understand the volatility. You can have a system that helps you understand what like current gamma levels are, a system that helps you understand what the supply and demand could be from CTAs, from risk parity funds, from index funds, right? You can have a system that helps you understand and interpret the news and current economic data, right? And then you can combine all. Now you have something to the point where you as a human can like factor those things together and understand it, right? So ultimately, the study that we need to get into when we're talking about our society is we have to understand systems, and we have to get better at writing systems. Twitter probably had tribal knowledge instead of systems documentation. Those remaining engineers got a big ass raise to deal with that crap or just quit. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing, is like, if I feel that Twitter is an interesting technology case, because you're talking about a system that has a very simple requirements, let's say, right? All it is a message with the username. So it's really simple. It's really simple, but it has the highest usage demands that you could ever possibly have, right? So that makes it a really interesting and unique system. And they definitely had to do a lot of really interesting and unique things to scale that properly. And Twitter went through at least 3 iterations of that are quite well documented. So, you know, if he had said something about like their base infrastructure like that, then I would be really concerned. The API, I'm kind of like, there probably is stuff stuck in the API that's been there forever and probably shouldn't be there anymore. So he's probably right to some extent. He's probably right in that there's like a real deficiency in the API that prevents them from being able to do something really useful. And it's just legacy software, right? And then you're right that, you know, probably the experienced Twitter engineers would have come in and said, well, that's probably not a good idea to get into, right? At the same time, Elon Musk would probably say, this is what we need to do for our business to be successful, so you've got to figure out and make it happen, right? But there seems to be a clear, like, but the issue is that even if that was the case, right? So I've run into situations where it's like, this system, it really does need to be rewritten. It doesn't meet our needs, and there's not a whole lot about the old system that we can really reuse, so it has to be completely redone from scratch. We've done that. Okay, I've done that. I still would never go up and say like what Elon Musk did, because I know that's the thing. I know that it's not like, oh, that we rewrite it, that it's just the simple thing. I know that that's like the trap that everybody falls into. So if I'm going to say that something needs to be rewritten, you have to make a really, really good case that it is, right? So I think it was an embarrassing tweet. I like when I went on there and I saw it on Reddit, I'm like, there's no way he actually said that. And I went and searched. I couldn't find it on his front page, but then like people linked it. It was a legit tweet. Okay, let's see if I can pull up the stream now. So we're getting close. Not yet. Now, one of the other things that I saw about Twitter that I thought was a little concerning was that there's a there was this one girl that was really gung-ho. She was really like when Elon Musk took over, she was like, okay, well, I'm gonna work really hard, and I'm totally all in on what Elon is saying about working hard and getting it done and everything, right? And then she just kind of like randomly got let go. So even some of the people that are really invested in it are having problems. So I don't think that these are problems that necessarily have to end Twitter, but I definitely think that there's reason to be concerned. Right? Again, if the Twitter engineers were good at their job, then they should eventually be able to move past it. So it still comes down to, were they overpaid or not? You know? Because that's the thing, is like the understanding a big system like that, not everybody's good at that. They're just not. I think that for me, that's something where I kind of have some advantages in it, because I have a natural tendency to try and look at every little connection and see how things relate to each other, right? And then want to look at the big picture. So systems is something that I get really interested about, right? But most people, they don't want, that's not the natural human experience. We did not evolve to understand systems, right? How to better understand complex systems, that's like the next stage in human evolution, right? This is where artificial intelligence will make a big effect, because the artificial intelligence will be able to understand those systems really well and maybe make good recommendations. Okay, so what link is, they're giving me CNBC. Okay. Well, even though the treasury market did have that little bit of a move down, it is like I wouldn't have made any money on it, so I'm glad I didn't take a trade. I'd say things are still pretty tight. Like, it looks like there's a little bit more level 2 activity out there, but they're definitely waiting for Powell here. Thomas, how are you? Terrible, because I'm about to listen to Congress, so that. It's always a bad mood if you have to listen to people in Congress speak. Ugh. Where can you listen to? So I'm gonna pull them up here in a second. If you really want it live, you could pull up the CNBC live stream. I'm still checking. Okay, so they have pulled. Okay, so he's saying they are prepared to increase the rate of their increases if necessary. moving. Micros aren't moving. You probably could have hit that guy at 396 and would have been fine. Well, we've had about 25,000 contracts net sell. So that's his like prepared remarks. Okay, now I'm getting it. Okay. The last thing I heard there on that was that the rates, my ultimate level of interest rates is likely to be higher than previously predicted. So I expect this is going to come back, but we might have an opportunity to sell it a little bit here. Wow, the liquidity is in the micros is sure light here now. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the new squawk here now.
The features.
So that you can hear it. And I will turn the music off. So you can just hear them yapping. Yeah. I'm telling you, like, this is a circus, but the market does care about. So you get a lot of movement that often ends up being kind of like a nothing. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if what he said was really that uneventful, though. Like, that's the thing. That's why I was saying, like, the issue, I don't feel like I gave you, NASDAQ Technologies asked me yesterday in a PM about it, and I don't, like, thinking back on it, I don't think that I gave him very good synopsis of how it tends to work, you know, because the market does pay a lot of attention to it.
To order. Welcome, Chair Powell. Thank you for doing your duty and seeming to enjoy it when you come to our committee. Thank you. Seeming to enjoy it. Today we examine the Fed's actions to combat inflation.
But I hate trading it. I really do.
How those actions affect American jobs and their paychecks. Prices are still too high across many parts of the economy. Yeah. We know that.
I think you could probably, I don't know about if you're getting a good price here and everything. There could be some really excessive pullback, but I think you got a good chance at getting to 4% today.
About prices while reporting record profit increases quarter after quarter and doing more and more stock buybacks. It's the people working hourly jobs to make ends meet. It's seniors on fixed income, and Social Security. It's everyone who gets their income from a paycheck each month, not an investment portfolio. It's those same Americans who stand to lose the most if the Fed's actions to curb inflation go too far. No matter what goes wrong.
Yep, the politicians are like, don't go too far.
Disasters. Profits somehow always.
We need to get reelected, Powell. Please don't have tight monetary policy.
Fed's tools are only one element in our fight against inflation. It's a complex problem. Interest rates.
Also, that guy needs to quit smoking. Holy cow.
Raising interest rates can't rebuild our supply chains and fix demand imbalances from the pandemic. Raising interest rates won't end Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. Raising interest rates won't prevent avian flu.
He's a Democrat, isn't he?
1/3 of our eggs.
He must be a Democrat.
Disasters from destroying key crops. And raising interest rates certainly won't stop big.
Oh, the high inflation is just because of Russia, guys.
Jack up prices far.
You see, it's already the first fucking thing he says, and he starts spreading misinformation about the current economic state in the country. He just starts spreading bullshit. This is why I hate it so much.
Workers just want to be paid too much.
It's just grandstanding.
choice, they tell us. Yet when you look at their profits and their executive salaries,
Oh,
and their stock
companies make too much money.
sure doesn't look like corporations.
Fuck you.
At every available alternative.
You have no clue what's going on. Just shut up and let the adults handle this, bro.
One of the biggest drivers of inflation.
I lost my ability to speak there.
The Fed should make clear that raising profit margins are spurring inflation.
Shut up and get to the actual interviewing so we can hear the guy that knows what's going on.
Of circumstances to expand profit margins. The broadening of inflation beyond commodity prices is more profit margin expansion than wage cost pressures. Think about that. From a chief economist at UBS, I'll say
Think about that.
Taken advantage. These companies have taken.
I thought we were here to interview Jerome Powell, not to interview Sherrod Brown and his thoughts on economics.
More profit margin expansion than wage cost pressures, unquote. The Fed, understandably, the Fed can't force corporations to change their ways or rewrite the Wall Street business model on its own. But the Fed can talk about it. High interest rates.
That's what happened to me. I got so upset that I couldn't even speak.
Policies that end up helping Wall Street, the largest corporations in the country, the wealthiest people in the country. Because let's be clear what we're talking about when people use the economic speak that can cloud this conversation. Cooling.
Oh, you mean like what? Everything that you just said?
Means workers get fewer raises. Of course, there are times when the Fed must act. We can't allow inflation to become entrenched. We've seen encouraging trends. That isn't happening. And there are other ways we can bring prices down instead of lowering demand. Again, making people poor, laying people off.
Wow, somebody just sold 2,000 contracts and smacked it down towards the lows.
Manufacturing back to the U.S. We can rebuild.
I'd say that there's a little bit of pushback whenever they touch 27, but somebody just hit it pretty hard there.
Infrastructure bill.
Yeah.
For the first time in decades, we're finally recognizing the damage that I and many of my colleagues warned the corporate offshoring.
I have to say that what we got from Powell's opening remarks was more hawkish than I anticipated.
America learned about this small town last month when a Norfolk Southern train derailed.
So this is kind of funny to watch the Treasuries trade here as this guy is talking, as though anything that this guy says matters.
Was once the center of American ceramics manufacturing, at one time producing 80% of ceramics of dishware in this country. One county produced 80% of it. When I was there last week, I was talking to the sheriff at the 1820 Candle Company. He was talking about how the last one closed just a few years back. Like so many industries, these jobs moved overseas, and we know why. The same reason Norfolk Southern cuts cost at the expense of safety, eliminating one third of its workforce in the last 10 years. Then you're surprised with these derailments? It's the same reason corporations now keep prices high, even as supply chains stabilize. It's the Wall Street business model. Chair Powell knows that. I know that. My Republican colleagues and Democratic colleagues know that. It's a Wall Street.
Yeah, either he's that uninformed or he's a big liar. Well, you got to understand that the Democrat Party has really created this bubble around themselves about inflation to insist to protect themselves. They're in denial about that inflation was caused by their policies. That's really what it's come down to, and so they have to try and blame it on somebody else, and they've decided to try and pin it on corporations.
We can't risk undermining one of the successes of our current economy.
Because yes, corporate profit margins did go up. They've probably already peaked, but why did they go up? Because they're the first people in the supply chain.
Just a number.
So yeah, they're going to make more money when you get inflation.
More options, even in
that's what happens.
That have seen a lot in recent years. It means people have the power to demand raises and retirement security and paid.
Doesn't mean they caused it.
Some control over their schedules. It means more Americans.
The money still needs to be there in the first place.
Dignity that comes with a good job that provides for your family. We must here ensure that all Americans have the opportunity for that dignity of work. It's a critical time. The consequences of missteps could be severe. Mr. Chairman, two more things that affect.
Like, here's the thing. They want to promote themselves as like, they're there for the people, like the people at the very bottom and everything. But the reality of it is that the Democrats' primary constituents are like, the people in big tech and everything, and they benefit from the inflation. They do.
Fifth Circuit's consumer financial
and I say that because I know that I in some way benefit from inflation because I already own a house, right? So then if as long as they continue to pay me in line with inflation, that just means that all of my costs become a smaller percentage of my income.
It recently ruled the
it helps
CFPB's
me.
independent funding is unconstitutional. If the Supreme Court upholds the Fifth Circuit's ruling, it will not only devastate CFPB, it will threaten the independent funding of many other federal agencies, including the Federal Reserve. I look forward to today's hearing, how the Fed will balance its dual mandate and continue to promote an economy where everyone who wants a good job can.
Now that one about the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau one, that's interesting, but that one is like, okay, so why don't you fund it like a real federal agency instead of trying to do this end around hack?
Sitting here, looking at my prepared remarks, thinking about, there's an opening coming where Vice Chairman Brainer's moving on. I think it's really important for us to make sure that all the information that we need in order to make a good decision on the next nom that we have in a timely fashion. So I would really.
Oh, look, see somebody that's actually interested in things that matter, like who we replace. I love that he starts with that.
We get every member of this committee has their questions answered in a timely fashion, and that the staff has their answers in a timely fashion. Listening to Chairman
Okay, so we had a little bit of a further move, and we're getting a little bit of the rebound here again.
I concluded that, well, I know Chairman Brown pretty well. I am sure he is sincere in his rant. Spending and printing trillions of dollars, caving to the radical left in this country, seeing policies posited and then implemented that led to the worst inflation in 40 years.
I mean, I don't want my bias to show too much here, but I think that Tim Scott is just absolutely savaging his Democrat counterpart.
On their shoulders. Seeing the devastation from South Carolina to Ohio, it's unbelievable that the progressives in this country who caused a 9.1% inflation would then turn somewhere besides in the mirror to see the absolute devastation caused by their out-of-control spending is remarkable. Remarkable. To stop the out-of-control inflation caused by the out-of-control spending, the Fed steps in.
I would have liked to have gotten I should have gotten it out when it was at 4%. That's okay.
The economy is necessary because we've seen the most radical approach to a problem that was in our rearview mirror being used as a Trojan horse to bring in a level of socialism and spending that our nation has not seen in my lifetime. The facts are very simple. When you get to 9.1% inflation in this nation, as a kid who grew up in a single-parent household, mired in poverty, a 40% today, 100% just a year ago increase in the gas prices devastates single mothers around this country. For seniors,
okay, but the gas price wasn't their fault.
Whose savings are being depleted with an average cost just last month of a
So some strong bids there at 28. That's curious. I'm glad I took profits where I did.
On the other side of the aisle to look any place besides a mirror.
I'd be looking at scratching now almost.
The truth is that when your food prices go up over 20%, when your electricity is up over 20%, you have to ask yourself, where in the world are they?
Financial Juice reports Fed swaps repriced to favor a 50 basis point hike in March over the 25 basis point hike. Really? That's big.
Not stumble, but fall.
But that's switched.
Why are we in the ditch? Because progressives used the pandemic as a way to usher in a form of spending that takes the money out of the pockets of everyday Americans and puts it in the coffers.
They could come all the way back down here. It looks like they're still able to move pretty freely, although we have gotten to like
trust the American people.
the
And when you
point
do
of
so,
diminishing
you don't have
returns
to
with
have
the
the Fed
liquidity?
come in and raise interest rates so high to quell the challenges in our economy so that today versus 18 months ago, the price of the same house for your mortgage payment is
Yeah.
twice as high.
So
Why?
So can I just repeat we're going to hear him in a second, but in his prepared remarks, Chairman Powell, the key quote in here is, as I mentioned, the latest economic data have come in stronger than expected, which suggests that the ultimate level of interest rates is likely to be higher than anticipated. That's the money quote here from Powell. So from a liquidity perspective, it looks like that they might be taking a pause, but this is probably an okay place for like a swing trade long rates, right?
It is a crisis when the average family in our country just a couple of years ago didn't have
I'm already up on the day on 2 longs in ZN before this collapse.
emergency to have prices go up by this amount. It's devastating.
I don't know. So what I will say is that the initial reaction on the release of his prepared remarks is likely to be the largest part of the move. But there is something in there that kind of suggests something that could continue for several days, right?
But to get to you, Chairman Powell.
Because I think that the market is right here. I think that things just shifted and that 50 basis points is more likely now, which is what Mira said before. But so
that we stick to our
anything below 4% is probably an okay buy.
resist the temptation to broaden our scope to address other important social issues of the day. Taking on new goals, however worthy,
From the day trading perspective, we probably already got the good move, but
undermine the case of our independence.
could be more.
You further noted that, and I quote, without explicit congressional legislation, it would be inappropriate for us to use our monetary policy or supervisory tools to promote a greener economy or to achieve other climate-based goals. We are not and will not be a climate policy maker. Do you still stand by those comments?
I do.
Thank you. Finally, we're not.
Oh, he wasn't ready to talk yet.
Finally,
They asked him a question.
yes, I knew the chairman would dock that from my time, and I appreciate you doing so with a sense of humor, with a great humor. Great humor. Finally, several of my Republican colleagues and I sent a letter to you discussing Vice Chair of Supervision Michael Barr's plan to conduct a holistic review of capital standards. I look forward to discussing those capital standards.
Wow, you got really lucky on those. You were going long, man, Uzi.
Helped illuminate some of the necessary challenges that we face as a nation and your answers to it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Speaking of illuminating, thank you, Senator Scott.
Yes, sir. Thank you for allowing me to use this.
Today we'll hear from Chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, on monetary policy in the state of our economy. And I don't expect Chair Powell to weigh in on the mini debate we just had, but I think we all know that the debt increase was much larger under President Trump and a Republican Senate than it has been since. Chair Powell, thank you for
That
your
is
service.
so dishonest. Why is Congress so
Brown,
fucking
Ranking
stupid?
Member Scott and
Yeah, there was kind of a pandemic. Are you trying to imply that if Biden was president back then, that the deficit wouldn't be as high? Are you kidding me? It would probably be twice as high as what Trump spent.
significant hardship.
It's just so, I hate it so much when they say that. It's so dishonest.
Goal.
So dishonest.
Over the past year, we've taken forceful actions to tighten the stance of monetary policy. We have covered a lot of ground, and the full effects of our tightening so far are yet to be felt. Even so, we have more work to do. Our policy actions are guided by our
Okay, so I just want to note, we are kind of trending down again a little bit, but the level 2 activity is a lot less right now.
Without price stability, we will not
It looks like the dollar is starting to become a dominant factor here again.
at all.
Let's zoom in on the dollar here.
Economic situation before turning
Yeah,
to
it's
monetary
definitely the
policy.
dollar here.
The data from January.
Bitcoin taking a dump off of this too, by the way.
Production and inflation have partly reversed the softening trends that we'd seen in the data just a month ago. Some of this reversal
Wasn't Trump's
reflects
national debt super high even before the pandemic?
January in much of the country.
Well, let's not say that
Along with revisions to the previous
I'll put it this way: Trump was not all that concerned about the debt, was he?
running higher than expected at the time of our previous FOMC meeting. From a broader perspective, inflation has moderated somewhat since the middle of last year.
But ultimately, all of that was kind of irrelevant compared to
2%.
the deficit spending that Congress did.
Total PCE inflation has slowed from its peak of 7% in June to 5.4% in January, as energy prices have declined and supply chain bottlenecks have eased. Over the past 12 months, core PCE inflation, which excludes the volatile food and energy prices, was 4.7%. As supply chain bottlenecks have eased and tighter policy has restrained demand, inflation in the core goods sector has fallen. And while
So you can see that there's kind of like this backwash, but they are having a hard time getting much higher than 28. This is where you're starting to see some pushback.
acceleration in this component of inflation.
And so the liquidity here in this spot around 29 is a little bit higher than you would normally see.
There's little sign of disinflation thus far in the category of core services excluding housing, a category that accounts for more than half of core consumer expenditures. To restore price stability, we'll need to see lower inflation in this sector, and there will very likely be some softening in the labor market conditions. Although nominal wage gains have slowed somewhat in recent months, they remain above what is consistent with 2% inflation and current trends in productivity. Strong wage growth is good for workers, but only if it's not eroded by inflation. Turning to growth. The U.S. economy has slowed significantly last year, with real GDP rising at a below-trend pace of 0.9%. Although consumer spending appears to be expanding at a solid pace this quarter, other recent indicators point to subdued growth of spending and production. Activity in the housing sector continues to weaken, largely reflecting higher mortgage rates. Higher interest rates and slower output growth also appear to be weighing on business fixed investment. Despite the slowdown in growth, the labor market remains extremely tight.
Oh, wow.
The unemployment
Okay,
rate
so
was 3.4% in
according to
January,
Nick Timmeros,
lowest
at the
level
beginning
since
of the day,
1969.
it was a 32% probability of a 50 basis point increase at the March FOMC. And then at 10 minutes after the release of the comments, it has gone to 50%.
For each
So even though it was just a relatively mild change here in the treasuries, apparently it was a really massive move in the bills.
have remained near historical lows. Turning to monetary policy. With inflation well above our longer run goal of 2%, and with the labor market remaining extremely tight, the FOMC has continued to tighten the stance of monetary policy, raising interest rates by 4.5 percentage points over the past year. We continue to anticipate that ongoing increases in the target range for the federal funds rate will be appropriate in order to attain a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2% over time. In addition, we are continuing the
clear
process
above
of
us.
significantly reducing the size of our balance sheet. We are seeing the effects of our policy actions on demand in the most interest-sensitive sectors of the economy. It will take time, however, for the full effects of monetary restraint to be realized, especially on inflation. In light of the cumulative tightening of monetary policy and the lags with which monetary policy affects economic activity and inflation, the committee slowed the pace of interest rate increases over its past 2 meetings. We will continue to make our decisions meeting by meeting, taking into account the totality of the incoming data and their implications for
Okay.
the outlook for economic
So this is a little dangerous right now.
Although inflation has been moderating in recent months, the process of getting inflation back down to 2% has a long way to go and is likely to be bumpy. As I mentioned, the latest economic data have come in stronger than expected, which suggests that the ultimate level of interest rates is likely.
I think that you're getting a little bit of a short covering squeeze here.
If the totality of the data were to indicate that faster tightening is warranted, we'd be prepared to increase the pace of rate hikes. Restoring price stability will likely require that we maintain a restrictive stance of monetary policy for some time. Our overarching focus is using our tools to bring inflation back down to our 2% goal and to keep longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Restoring price stability is essential to set the stage for achieving maximum employment and stable prices over the long
Could you imagine if he said, therefore, a deep and catastrophic recession is the only possible outcome?
against prematurely loosening policy. We will stay the course until the
I don't know, man. Like, you think about the amount of tightening that we've had, it really makes you wonder what will it take to get a recession,
across the country.
you know?
Everything we do is in service to our public mission. At the Federal Reserve, we will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are 23 of us on this committee. Almost everyone will be here today.
There's really
Ask
23.
each of us to stay as close to the 5-minute mark as we can because we have votes at 11:30. So thank you all for your cooperation. Chair Powell, thank you.
Oh,
Job growth is strong,
so they're not going to, this isn't going to go for that long.
historically low. You might not know that from the
Well, I think I might have missed a good opportunity to get long there.
corporate greed, rising inequality, supply chain disruptions, Russia's bestiality.
Because there was like some sort of a short covering rally and it turned back down around real fast after that.
Post
Looks like it may be the dollar driving that turn. Yeah.
that the Fed is treating this economic period as it has in the past instead of reacting differently?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've been aware since the very beginning and have discussed this publicly on many occasions that there are some differences this time. We, in particular, have not seen the kind of supply side collapse that we saw at the very beginning of the inflation outbreak. Also, the outbreak of a war, which had significant effects on commodity prices a year ago.
Yeah. I was saying he needs to quit smoking.
Some similarities. There is a mismatch between supply and demand. You can see that in the goods sector still. You saw it in housing prices going up over 40% since before the pandemic, and you see it in the labor market where we have 1.9 job openings for every opening, for every unemployed person. So we're well aware that this particular situation involves a mix of cycles of forces, not all of which our tools can affect. But there is a job here for us to do in better aligning demand with supply.
Okay, understanding you have limited tools to
I think that was a good answer, actually.
conversations.
So the whole thing is that, like, just because there are other things affecting inflation doesn't mean that the Federal Reserve should allow supply and demand to go out of whack. They still have to do their job.
Contend we can't follow the same old playbook. Next question. Last year, 3 banking regulators issued proposed updates on the Community Reinvestment Act to account for changes in our banking system. My question is, does the Fed remain committed to work with FDIC and OCC to finalize a CRA rule, and when will that rule likely be finalized?
Yes, we do remain committed, and I believe we are in broad agreement with the other 2 agencies on the revisions to the rule.
Okay, so I want to note that we are getting flattening here.
Take some time, and then after that, of course, it will come to the Board of Governors for a vote, and that will involve briefings and discussions.
So that might explain why when we had such a big move that I did not get paid a whole lot from it.
It will be some months.
Okay, thank you. Banks weathered the shock of the COVID-19 shutdowns mostly because of the fiscal response provided by Congress. We now see a spike in loan delinquencies, an increase in overall risk. Banks are again plowing billions, as many other corporate leaders always defended by.
Well, I feel like that now would be a good time for a swing
Makes me concerned that there's a
long rates, short treasuries.
Banks could end up with too
But
little capital. That's
it
why
seems like the market is pretty illiquid, that the movement is pretty random, and that it's kind of a crapshoot in terms of picking a good area.
strong and exercise more long-term forward thinking than corporate CEOs that seem to be focused on the short term.
I can assure you as to the first part, that we'll keep capital requirements strong.
I didn't expect you to comment on give me an opinion about your looking more forward than companies that look at the short-term benefits of stock buybacks.
Oh, what a
Chair,
nasty comment.
I'd ask you about the risk posed by crypto assets, stablecoin, the Fed.
Like, of course, you would only do the thing that's good for businesses.
Evaluating the risks of
Listen, I don't think that it's a good idea to piss off the Fed chairman early on.
So this is something we've been quite active in this area, and I'll say that we believe that innovation is very important over time to the economy. We don't want to stifle innovation. We don't want regulation to stifle innovation in a way that just favors incumbents and that kind of thing. But like everyone else, we're watching what's been happening in the crypto space, And, what we see is, quite a lot of turmoil. We see fraud. We see a lack
Looks
of
like we had two complete legs of merit order shirt, and the third leg may be tough to catch.
So what we've been doing is making
yeah.
sure that the
Actually, I would.
financial
Here's how I would try and
supervise
call
and
it:
regulate
is
are careful.
there was definitely the initial meta order, right?
With the
This right here
crypto space
is the point at which the liquidity pushed back, and this was the latecomers. So I wouldn't call this a second leg per se, so much as it is. You just get a really inefficient market. You get a lot of people coming in trading late, right? Not seeing this. So I don't think that I've seen anything yet that I would consider to be like order flow beyond the typical speculation. Right.
And we have a number of upcoming
But
vacancies.
that's where I think you could go long rates here in anticipation that those meta orders will eventually come as they try and reprice the upcoming rate hike.
Chairman and I both have strong passions about the challenges that we face as a country. The one thing that I do believe that we agree on is the importance of having a strong capital markets as it relates to making sure that Americans have the ability to continue to grow their businesses and to solve their challenges. And frankly,
That sure came back fast, didn't it?
the same comment that the Chairman had around capital standards is where I'm going to go with my thoughts today. When I think back on these last few years, it's hard not to recognize the extraordinary efforts our financial institutions
Note that the micros are getting tight
to
here.
administer a program like the PPP, all while weathering a shutdown.
Spread is has
I welcome your
come really tight here.
From my viewpoint, our banking system was resilient. Our financial institutions stepped up and delivered aid to support families and businesses every single day. That's why Vice Chair Barr's broad comments around holistic review of our capital trouble me so much. We should be laser focused on our economy and addressing the needs of everyday Americans, trying
Can I show you something else really cool?
and helping them open the door to opportunity. As you and I both know, capital
Look where we stop.
must be continuous.
Right at my line where it says that it's the short's average
provide an
position.
increased benefit, and requiring banks to hold capital that is not risk-based and appropriately tailored to a bank's size, scope, and activities can cause more harm than good. At a time of record inflation, where everyday needs are more expensive, we should not be pursuing actions that are harmful. Rather, we should be supporting the engine of our economy, small businesses. While I remain
Tough
greatly
call
concerned
here.
by the Vice Chair's comments,
Seems like a good price, but I'm not seeing pushback.
this review is appropriate, keeping the impacts on our banking system front and center. We must promote and further the growth of our economy and thereby our people. Anything less should be unacceptable. To that end, will you commit that any ongoing capital review by the Federal Reserve will follow the law and that any follow-on regulatory proposals will be risk-based and tailored to an institution's activity, size, and complexity, and not a one-size-fits-all?
Yes, I can easily commit to that. We're very strongly committed to tailoring, and that'll be, I can say that anything we do will reflect tailoring, which is a long-held principle for us and also now a requirement in the law.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. 2 weeks ago, I sent a letter with Chairman McHenry to Chair Gensler regarding the SEC's climate disclosure rule, urging him to rescind his proposal and reminding him that the SEC is a market regulator, not a climate forecaster. Much like Congress designed the SEC to protect investors, to maintain fair order.
So I even though I would really like 396 seems really
climate change
attractive to me here.
Congress designed the Federal Reserve to promote price.
This is like a 5 basis point pullback though.
Not to play politics. To that end, I find worrying the Fed's announcement of recent actions to consider climate-related scenarios, coupled with remarks by the Vice Chair of Supervision, as attempts to incorporate broader ESG policies into the financial services system. Banks have and continue to account for weather-related risks in their risk management, but efforts that attempt to predict climate change far into the future fall outside the scope of their authority. Importantly, the level of speculation required in these models should highlight their arbitrary and capricious nature. At a time when our economy is suffering from historically high inflation, I expect our central bank to focus its time and resources on bringing inflation down, not on policy outside of its mandate. I noted in my opening statement a recent speech that you've given about the state of the Fed and how you should resist the temptation to broaden its scope and to address social issues. Do you agree that the Federal Reserve does not have the authority or statutory direction to use its monetary policy or supervisory tools to wade into the ESG or other climate policies?
I do. As you know, there's a tightly focused role that we do have that I believe that we have, but I would agree with your statement.
Mr. Chairman, I have 20 seconds left, but I'm going to defer because of my earlier question to my opening statement.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator Menendez is close, but not here yet. So Senator Rounds. Oh, okay. So, but nice try.
Yes, sir. Just want to make sure whatever you say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, first of all, welcome. It's always good to have you in front of our committee. And as you know, both.
Do you think that it's going to be able to completely retrace the move? That would be something else.
And over the past 12 months,
To get back to 05 half, I mean, it's just a little hop away.
About 4% since President.
I'm sure glad that I was, like, again here, a lot of this. I think he said something important, but this often ends up being a nothing burger.
At the end of 2022,
So
credit card debt hit a record
that's why it was really appropriate in this situation to just take the quick profit, right? Instead of trying to let it run.
5% spike from a year earlier. And an average credit card balance rose to $5,805. Over the past year, the Fed has acted aggressively to tame inflation, and yet we are still seeing price increases. And as we've discussed this several times, but I recognize that it's been an ongoing discussion, but I believe that this further proves that we have long been feeling the effects of a policy-induced inflation resulting from decisions by the Biden administration, primarily cutting off the resources necessary to improve and increase domestic energy production. I continue to be concerned that if you attempt to use the tools that are available at this time for the Fed, then I believe that we're going to have a challenge of not being able to address specifically the challenges brought out when you have a policy is promoting higher prices with regard to energy, as opposed to what you're trying to do, which is to bring down the total overall cost. And I just wanted to ask, I guess, and you're going to think this is something that we've heard before, but do you believe that you currently have the monetary policy tools to actually reduce inflation? And I just put it in this perspective. In January of 2021, the CPI was 1.4% when the Biden administration began. In January of 2022, and this is before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, CPI was at 7.5%, 7.5%. Today, March of 2022, CPI is 8.5%.
I could still take 396.
Wouldn't it be fair to assess that?
I think I'm done for today.
Policy or the inflation that we've seen here may very well be due to policy.
I do think that it should be hard for them to keep these prices. Well, look, it's already going.
Not for us to point fingers. Our job is to use our tools. You asked whether we have the tools to get this job done, and we do over time. There are some things that we can't.
Tell you what,
predict,
let's
but over time,
do it
We can achieve 2% inflation, and we will.
with sim orders.
You've got a limited number of tools
This is a situation where it's really hard
that you have.
for me with my one contract to get good spots and keep risk, but
If there are
you know,
competing interests,
in our pretend sim account where we can lose $10,000 if we wanted to,
you don't have the wherewithal.
makes a little bit more
to
sense.
decide one tool versus another based on whether it's policy induced or whether it is a matter of a shortage in supplies from outside or whether it's war related.
That's right. Our tools essentially work on demand, moderating demand, and so that's what we can do.
So if there were policies in place that actually help to reduce inflation, in other words, and by that, I'm just going to look at energy alone just as a good example. If policies were in place that were actually allowing energy prices to come down in the United States, then you would have less of a need to use the very blunt tools that you do have right now with regard to increasing rate increases. Is that a fair statement, sir?
In a sense, it is, but I would just say on energy,
I'm not trying to get you to a policy discussion with what the president's doing on on his energy policy. I just want to make it clear that you have to respond to what's in front of you, and it doesn't matter where the inflation is coming from or what's driving it up. You're simply trying to bring it back down to that 2% number with the only tools that you've really got.
Yes, but I will say on energy, energy has tended over time to fluctuate up and down, and it's not mainly affected by our tools. So the things we look at are really things that are tightly linked to demand in the U.S. economy. Those we can affect.
And I think just the fact that you've been increasing you've been increasing.
In other words, he's saying that energy is not actually that significant of a pressure on them right now.
Just indicated that when you have high energy prices, it's tough to impact that part of it with the monetary policy that you've got available to you.
So we focus on everything, but we also focus on core in particular, which doesn't include energy prices. And what's happened is core inflation has come down, but nowhere near as fast as we might have hoped, and it has a long way to go.
Thank you. One last question. Last June, Vice Chairman of Supervision.
They
Mike
target
Moore
core
testified before
PCE
the
that
committee
doesn't have
that he
energy.
would
Yeah,
defend
you're
the
right.
use of the
He's right.
aggregation method as an alternative approach to the insurance capital standards. The
I love it when you have somebody that really understands what they're talking about, you know? It's kind of like, I understand what you're going for, but this is what you really actually need to know. When you're in that position, you're asking that question, it can be frustrating because you feel like you're not getting what you want, but it's a great gift.
Thanks, Senator Round. Senator
You know?
Menendez of New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to take this moment to remind my colleagues.
Okay, well, I didn't get as many contracts as I would have hoped up there, but
Latinos that call the United States home. We are the largest minority group in the country. We account for nearly 20% of the United States population. We contribute almost $3 trillion in GDP. Yet Latinos have no.
I'll just put one right here on my average position.
In the 109-year history of the Federal Reserve, there has never been a single member of the Board of Governors or regional bank president who has the lived experience
Do you think he will?
in the United States. And in practice, that means that the voices of nearly 1/5 of our country's people are repeatedly drowned out when the Fed is making critical decisions.
I don't think that
on
that's
policy. Decisions that affect whether a Latino family can afford.
like the fundamental issue I have with his framing is that I think that if they're properly qualified, that a Hispanic Federal Reserve Board member won't make any different of a decision from a white guy or a black guy. I don't think any of that matters. It's not a real critical component in how they make their decisions.
Dual mandate, who will preserve the independence.
But I mean, if there's somebody that's qualified,
The
sure.
administration has rightly nominated and advocated for a
It's going to happen eventually, right?
candidates with similar qualifications, both at the Fed and elsewhere. But despite having 5 opportunities over
What that means is that the Biden administration is almost certainly gonna nominate a Latino, huh?
repeatedly chosen not to. Representation, or lack thereof, does not happen by accident. It is a choice. I hope the administration makes the right choice with this nomination. Mr. Chairman, would you say that it is
I also really hate this false accusation that people push around that anywhere in which there is a disparity in the statistics between different groups, that it's the result of discrimination. That's not true.
Of defaulting on the debt for the first time in history of this country, jeopardizing our credit and the world economy. I'm getting a sense of deja vu because, once again, Republicans are recklessly demanding draconian spending cuts to programs that hardworking
See, if I was the congressman there, the question that I would be asking is, what are the factors that you think are the biggest pressures on inflation, and what are some policies that Congress could potentially consider to help make your job easier?
time to do that.
Right? That's what they should really be asking, because if you keep saying, oh, the Federal Reserve's tools don't handle these sorts of things, well, okay, so then what is it that you're supposed to be doing that you're not?
So I guess I will start, if I can, by saying that these are really matters between the executive branch and Congress. We do not seek to play a role in these policy issues. But at the end of the day, there's only one solution to this problem, and that is Congress whatever else may happen will happen, but Congress really needs to raise the debt ceiling. That's the only way out in a timely way that allows us to pay all of our bills when and as due. And if we fail to do so, I think that the consequences are hard to estimate, but they could be extraordinarily adverse, and could do longstanding harm.
Yeah. I don't think it's the end of the world, but we don't want to see it happen.
That's a mild statement of what would happen.
Mild statement.
I understand. I didn't ask you to engage in
It's not the end of the world like Democrats make it out to be, but it wouldn't be positive. It definitely wouldn't be positive, okay?
the abstract question of what happens if you have a debt default. Isn't
Did
even
Bitcoin end up spiking higher? That's
the
funny.
question, the possibility?
Yes, they
the
did.
United
That's
States will
funny.
not honor its full faith and credit have consequences within the economy?
In principle, it could. I think markets tend and observers tend to watch this and tend to think that it will work out, and it has in the past worked out. So it needs to work out this time too.
Now, seeing your testimony before the committee, is it fair to say that you'll do whatever is
When is window dressing becoming an official policy instead of behind the scene hush hush?
We will do what we can, everything we can to restore price stability while also serving maximum employment.
And primarily, that means additional rate increases, would it not? What other tool do you have?
That's what we have. The balance sheet, the shrinkage of the balance sheet will continue too, but it's principally.
So the question is, when does that part
Well, I got some good excursion on that, but it's already coming back on me.
tame inflation come into conflict with your other mandate of maximum employment?
Not now, when we have the lowest unemployment in 50
I'm not
years.
liking it. I'm just
and
gonna-
where we have,
I'm just gonna
a labor
scratch it.
market that is
Two-tick profit.
extremely tight, extremely. So, but that time could come, but it really isn't now, where we're very far from our price stability mandate, and in effect, the economy is past most estimates of maximum employment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Menendez. Senator Kennedy of Louisiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Powell, thank you for being here. Thank
He's
you
got that
you and your
that
team
accent.
for helping to save the economy during the pandemic meltdown.
Meltdown.
For what it's worth, I'm generally supportive of the actions of the Fed right now, and I'm not going to ask you today to blame anybody.
You can't log into Ninja Trader, Patrick?
Money. It stimulates the economy, does it not?
I mean, I haven't had to try. Now I'm too afraid to try.
So if there's a spending that's not accompanied by taxes would have a net.
Do you mean you can't log into data? So do you really mean continuum?
When Congress borrows money to spend even more, that stimulates the economy even more, does it not?
At the margin, yeah.
Margin, yeah.
Okay. If Congress reduced the rate of growth in its spending and reduced the rate of growth in its debt accumulation, it would make your job easier in reducing inflation, would it not?
I don't think
Sherrod Brown's
factor driving inflation
assistant needs to
but
talk
it's
a little
absolutely
further away from the
essential
mic.
that we do slow the pace of growth, particularly for the areas of the budget
All right, let's
that are
try to
growing.
unpack this then. I'm not trying to trick you. You're raising interest rates. You're raising interest rates to.
Auto Leica says Tradeovate has been down for the last 44
Pull the
minutes.
economy off.
And one of the ways you measure your success, other than fluctuation in gross domestic product, is the unemployment rate. Is it not?
Yes, one of the measures.
Okay. So in effect, I'm not being critical. When you're slowing the economy, you're trying to put people out of work. That's your job, is it not?
Not really. We're trying to restore price stability.
No, you're trying to raise
not
the
wages,
you're trying to
or
raise the unemployment rate.
There are a lot, so there are a lot of.
That means, I know you don't like the phrase, so let me strike it. You're trying to raise the unemployment rate, are you not?
No, we're not trying to raise it. We're trying to realign supply and demand, which could happen through a bunch of channels. Like, for example, just job openings.
All right,
Job
let
openings
me
could.
put it another way, okay? The Economist did a wonderful study. They looked at 10 disinflation.
I really hate these events.
America going all the way back.
I really do.
to the 1950s. Disinflation is what you're trying to do. It's a slowing in the rate of inflation. Am I right?
Yes.
In other words, prices don't go down, they just don't go up as fast. Deflation is when prices actually go down. You're trying to achieve disinflation, are you not?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Based on history, in the 10 times that we got inflation down, disinflation since the 1950s, in order to reduce inflation by 2%, unemployment had to go up 3.6%. Now that's, is it not?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but yes, the standard has been that there have been recessions and downturns when the
Okay.
Fed has tried to reduce inflation.
Now, right now, the current inflation rate is 6.4%, and the current unemployment rate is 3.4%. Now, if history is right, I'm not asking you to again blame anybody, but if history is right, unless you get some help, in order to get inflation down from 6.4% to, let's say, 4.4%, and the unemployment rate is going to have to rise to 7% based on history.
That's what the record would say.
Okay, and to get inflation down to 2.2% based on history, an immutable fact, unemployment would have to go to 10.6%. Would it not?
No, I wouldn't.
That's what the record shows. That's what the history shows.
Yeah, I don't think that kind of a number is at all in
I
play
mean,
here.
I know you're reluctant to admit it, and you don't want to get in the middle of a policy.
Dude, so if that actually happens, they're gonna replay that incessantly. Oh, I don't think that kind of number is in play here, and then be like, and it happened.
Sticky inflation down is to attack it on the monetary side, which you're doing, and on the fiscal side, which means Congress has got to.
He does not like this. He's mad because he's like, this is a Republican, and I don't like you putting it down and putting it in these terms.
I get that you don't want to get in the middle of that fight. But the more we help on the fiscal side, the fewer people you're going to have to put out of work. Isn't that a fact?
He's right.
Please answer.
It could work out that way.
Sir?
It could work out that way.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Kennedy,
He's right. He's right. The Congress needs to do something.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Chairman Powell, for being here today.
This will put a dent on his portfolio.
Supply chain disrupted significantly, and
Yeah, well, look, the S&P 500 is pushing new lows, even though the treasuries haven't gone there yet, and the dollar is pushing up. I still think, well, man, if we could have gotten 396,
and to what extent
I was really tempted to take 396, and I said, nah, this.
that is located.
I don't want to mess with this. This is always a shit. Excuse me. This is always a shit show, and I'm glad that I don't have the stress of having a position on right now.
Spending on goods.
But given that the S&P 500 is moving to new lows, that 3.96 may end up being a really, really good entry.
The global supply chain.
Let's see how it goes.
That was the source of the original inflation. It has now spread over the last 2 years to housing and also to the rest of the service sector. So to your question, we are seeing goods inflation has been coming down for some time now. It's still too high, but it's coming.
You love it? I
Housing services
hate it. I hate it.
There's
It's a random movement on nonsense, and the whole thing that's going on here, it's a circus.
But this big service sector that's everything else, which is financial services, medical services.
I think Powell is such a smart guy.
All of those things.
I know he's not the perfect Fed chairman, but
now, which had nothing to do with
he knows what he's talking about. He's gotten good at this.
And is there anything that you can do that would target?
No, I don't want to play. I don't want to play this game.
Affecting the other areas.
I would rather. The game that I would rather have played is
tools are
be long rates at 3.95 and then just sit back and watch it go. You know, like these swings back and random swings back and forth is just yuck. I hate it.
Community Financial Services Association versus CFPB. That the CFPB
because it's just random noise. It's just traders overreacting to every stupid thing Congress says.
Both the Board of Governors and CFPB rely on the same source of funds and draw on those funds in virtually identical ways. If the board of governor's funding structure would be found unconstitutional, what would the implications be for the country and monetary policy?
Well, it would be very significant, but I have to say, we have significant responsibilities, but I would be reluctant to comment on a case that's before the Supreme Court.
But it is certainly something that you've had people examine for possible.
Yeah, what they say can move
Central
prices.
banks tend to be self-funding because of the way they work.
But it's a difference between does it move prices or should it move prices?
Forth on the
Right.
impact of rate hikes. On
Like, to me,
workers. And
what he said in his opening comments says to me that interest rates should go to 4% and beyond, right?
upwards necessarily, and
And
that
all this other stuff is noise.
currently stable. But the impact on increased interest.
But more so than that, it's the bigger issue here. The reason that I don't like it is this.
Yourself out of that dilemma.
Yes, we know that these things can move prices, but can you predict them?
Right now,
I can't necessarily predict what the congressman is going to say next, right?
and they've been doing so without
So for informed trading, it's not the most,
really, and that's so.
it's not the best opportunity from an informed trading
The
perspective.
current situation.
The initial comments were, because that made a big move, right? But now that they're talking and we're kind of in this,
like the war,
like
like the supply chains.
disrupted markets and big ranges and everything, it's not very good action from an informed trading perspective.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman.
Market making wise, you probably can make a ton, right?
Senator Brett, Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Powell, it's great to have you here today. Over the past 2 years, we've seen the highest inflation of my lifetime, driving up costs for American families across the board. According to the U.S. Department of
I want to be Alice, not Bob.
in 2021 was 7%, and in 2022 it was 6.5%. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the cost of food went up 10% in 2022. And the real effects of that is moms and dads across this nation that are working to put food on the table for their kids, for their babies.
Yes, DC Verex, I've seen a lot of people mention Trader Veda's down.
This has devastated hardworking
Alice is the generic name for the informed trader in the market microstructure literature.
In response,
Or at least in the Trades, Quotes, and Prices book.
Rate more than 4 percentage points. Being far from transient,
Alice is the informed trader and Bob is the market maker.
and well above the Fed's long-term goal of remaining under 2%. In the coming
So as I said, I want to be Alice, not Bob.
factors and indicators are you paying attention to as you and the federal
I mean, Bob's job is okay,
increase rates?
but
So
I think that Alice's job is cooler. Because she actually knows something.
we're going to be looking at
know?
inflation in the three sectors that I
Is Karen the
housing sector and then the broader service sector, and we need the
No, so they don't have a name for the retail trader,
that's really important.
but I like to call him Noise Trader Ned.
The time
right.
to pass, so that
Noise Trader Ned uses technical analysis, thinks that he has an edge and he doesn't.
are being signed at relatively small increases. So we'll be watching very, very carefully, though, at the larger service sector, which is 56%
No.
of consumer spending, and more than that of what's currently inflation. So that's one thing we'll be.
Don't be the Noise Trader Ned.
Also, we raised rates very quickly last year, and we know that if monetary policy, tightening policy, has delayed effects. It takes a while for the full effects to be seen in economic activity and inflation.
Yeah, some people in
Effects coming in.
Discord mentioning 4,000. I think that's pretty likely at this point.
Taking that into account as we think about rate hikes.
So when you're looking at this, obviously not to get into a policy discussion, but if there were an increase of energy production in this country, do you feel like that would help drive down inflation?
Well, I think over time, more energy would mean lower energy prices.
I've never heard of that acronym before.
On on what we call core inflation, because
The technical definition of the Fed of what above the poverty level means.
and our tools are really
Asset limited, income constrained, but
The
employed.
cost of energy
That's
is not just
interesting.
what you pay at the pump. It ends up affecting every good across this great nation. Additionally, I'd like
Why
to ask you
pink?
about labor participation. So when you look at the unemployment rate, and we
talking about her suit? It's a nice suit.
having to be displaced in order for us to maybe get to the inflation rate that we would like as a nation. I'd like to focus on the labor
Bitcoin
participation
came
rate.
back,
So
but
right now it's 62.4%.
it's gone both ways off of this. I think eventually they're going to move lower though.
Back into the
You don't like it,
workforce.
NASDAQ?
Would that be a positive factor with regards to driving us down to the 2% rate that you would want to achieve?
I don't know who that is. Katie Britt.
I mean, remember those people coming into jobs, that would be great, because the economy clearly wants more people than are currently working.
Senator for Alabama.
So it wouldn't be a zero-sum game, but it would be great for the country and great for them if they were to come into the labor force.
Amen. I believe that increasing in capital requirements on financial institutions would have a chilling effect.
You know, I
on
see a lot of
and the availability
battle on social media about men versus the women and everything. But I think that this is a good example of things that women, quite frankly, do better than men, right? You notice all of these other guys, they've had trouble getting comments out of him. It's kind of been like, even with the Republican, it's kind of been butting heads with him a little bit, trying to get him to say something. And that's not what's been happening with her, right? They've been having a good conversation. Because women
Always a balance.
are better at that conversation.
Makes banks safer and sounder. We also know that you're
Women are more sensitive to maintaining harmony in the group, and so they're able to
but I think it's
get what they want while still
perfect equilibrium.
keeping everybody happy about it and feeling good about the conversation.
And I know, out of respect,
That makes sense.
for
I
the
don't think
chairman,
I articulated that very well,
just
but
end by saying, I heard what you said. Obviously, as you have said, the Federal Reserve.
if I was questioning, I would not be as skilled at doing this as she is.
Statement on that. I agree with you that there's a difference between policymakers and financial regulators. And
You should meet some Dutch women.
in the future.
Thanks, Senator Britt. Senator Warner from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you.
Oh, here we go.
Good to see you again.
Here we go.
By saying, depending on who's asking questions, we're either pounding you for how quickly we're going to drive that inflation back to 2%, or pounding you on making sure that we don't push the economy into a recession and drive up unemployment. I got to tell you, and it's these are maybe not the cheap seats, but I actually think you've done a pretty good job in terms of both ratcheting up rates,
Gonna mute myself for a second.
starting to tail off a little bit. I think we all were concerned by the January numbers were concerning, but I do think your tailored approach.
I was going to keep it going because I want to see Warren speak, but I don't think that's going to work. So I'm just going to end the broadcast. Sorry, guys.
the right approach. I'm going
I'll catch you tomorrow. It's the same thing, right?
to get two questions.